Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle HR Leadership Forum, Trends, Talent Analytics, and Change Management. My name is Eric Wallace with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have some important information to share with you, then we'll turn the floor over to our keynote speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions during the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we'll address your questions at the end of the session. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our speaker. Today we have Ingrid Emmons, Vice President and Head of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Aveanna Healthcare. We're excited to have Ingrid for her keynote presentation titled Being the Change, Cultivating a More Inclusive Culture. Welcome, Ingrid. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Eric. It's a real honor to be with everyone today. So we are going to have a good time over the next 30 minutes talking about being the change and our responsibility in driving change and cultivating a more inclusive culture. We'll ask ourselves some difficult questions along the way, but I promise you it will be worth it. All right, so why don't we get started? What you're looking at is what I refer to as an inclusion continuum. So if you stop for a moment and really absorb this, think about this in the work environment. What do you feel when you're at work? Do you feel slighted? Do you feel tolerated maybe? On some days, do you feel respected? Other times, maybe you feel included. How often do you feel valued? The goal as we build an inclusive work environment is for us to all feel valued. And we drive that as inclusive leaders. So I want you to take a moment and jot down where you believe you fall along the inclusion continuum. I know that sometimes it's situational. You might be working on that really tough project and you feel respected for your knowledge of the industry and how you navigate the organization. And then other times you feel really valued when you produce phenomenal results. But overall, where do you fall on this inclusion continuum? I'm going to ask you another question, a follow-up question. Where do those on your team fall on this inclusion continuum? Most importantly, do you know where they fall? And the reason why that matters is I don't know about you, but I have certainly been the leader who's received employee engagement survey results. And I'm looking at the comments and I'm thinking, what? This is the way people feel? So it's important for us to level set and gauge not only where we fall, but where our teams fall in a really transparent and authentic way. All right, now that you've completed this exercise, let's move to our next slide. If you take away nothing else today, nothing else, I want you to remember this. When you think about the inclusion continuum, when people feel valued, they add value. That's the algorithm. It's not that complicated. When people feel valued, they add value, and that's the goal. That is ultimately the goal. As we go through today's session, I don't want to give you a lot of homework. I know all of you are very busy already, but I'm going to ask you to capture 3 key actions or behaviors that you can commit to as a leader in order to cultivate change. 3 key actions or behaviors that you can commit to as a leader in order to cultivate change. And I'm going to expose you in our conversation today to a number of those actions and behaviors. And some of you on the call today may be saying, you know what, I'm not a leader because I don't have a team of direct reports. But make no mistake about it. We are all leaders because we set the tone and we give permission around what it feels like to work on a team. You hear many people in the HR space say people don't leave organizations, they leave leaders. But here is the reality. You leave because of what it feels like to work on a team. And a leader drives that to some extent. But it's also about the people that you work with. Think again about that inclusion continuum and what that team feels like. Do they feel respected? Or are they all the way to the right and they feel valued? Our ultimate goal, because when people feel valued, they add value. Riddle me this, riddle me that. Empathy is to compassion as diversity is to inclusion. I'm going to say that one more time. Empathy is to compassion as diversity is to inclusion. This is something I feel really strongly about. So what connects the two? If you think about it for a moment, empathy is when we feel what someone is going through. But compassion is when we do something about it. We activate. Diversity and inclusion work in the exact same way. Diversity, as you know, is about representations and the numbers. But ultimately, for us to drive toward inclusion, for people to feel valued, we have to activate as leaders. And that's what this conversation is about. What are those thoughts, actions, and behaviors that allow us to bridge the gap between the two? Let's activate. Cultivating the change. As I mentioned before, activating involves behaviors that we focus on, experiences, or actions and/or thoughts. I love a good acronym. The acronym here is BEAT. Behaviors, experiences, actions, and thoughts. You know this, you're experts. I don't have to tell you this, but it is important for us to have inclusive practices in every aspect of our employment cycle, from inclusive talent acquisition to inclusive talent development, creating an inclusive culture. And this is one we don't often think about, but it's so important. Inclusive separations. I was on a call the other day with one of my peers, and she mentioned to me that what the organization does is that before someone joins the team, once they've given notice to the organization that they're leaving, what they do is they have the entire team send an email to that individual who's joining them to say, welcome to the team, can't wait for you to be here, heard great things about you. So when you think about inclusive talent acquisition and activating that as a leader, think about how powerful that is, right? As one of the strategies that we can adopt that doesn't cost money, but that person gets there day one, excited, ready to hit the ground running. And you know, and I know that what happens in the first 30 days in an organization is everything around their perspective on the experience. Now, let's focus a little bit now on inclusive separations. All eyes are watching us when we separate, and I'm going to give you 2 examples of when this was done well and not so well. So let's start off with the not so well so we can end on a high note. And some of you may have seen this communication, a fork in the road. Going forward, to build a better breakthrough Twitter 2.0 and succeed in an increasingly competitive world, we will need to be extremely hardcore. This will mean working long hours at high intensity. And by the way, only exceptional performance will constitute a passing grade. This is an email sent to those in the organization. And if you just skip the second paragraph and move to the next sentence, if you are sure that you want to be a part of the new organization, just click yes on the link below. Just click yes, no conversation, no consultation. And was not done so by 5 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, it's now Thursday, we're on Thursday, will receive 3 months of severance. Was that an inclusive separation? Let's compare that to this memo. We never thought or imagined when we were making hiring decisions that we would be in this situation. And we want everyone here to know that we care about you as a former colleague and appreciate everything you've done for the organization. In our minds, you are valued alumni. In service of that, we are creating email addresses for everyone departing. And we're going to continue to roll this out in the months ahead. We are going to set up live one-on-one conversations between each departing employee and a manager over the course of the next day. If you are impacted, look out for an invite on your calendar. For those not affected, there will be some bumpiness over the next few days. We ask that you help us do right by users and departing employees, who, by the way, we still consider a part of our alumni group. Many of you know I'm in healthcare. We are very incestuous. We're constantly hiring back people who've left the organization. So we continue to remain connected. And this is one of the areas that we don't understand how powerful it is, not only for those leaving, but for those staying, around how we handle these separations. I want us to explore the concept of hidden stories as we continue this conversation about behaviors, experiences, actions, and thoughts that drive us to be inclusive leaders. Let's explore your hidden story and how that might be impacting where you fall on this inclusion continuum. I also want you to think about how much your team's hidden story may be impacting where they fall on the continuum. And I know you're saying, Ingrid, what is this hidden story? Well, let's watch a video, and that will be self-explanatory. I ask you the question, what is your hidden story? What would people be surprised to know about you? People that you work with every day. The hidden story that for you is front and center in everything that you do. Who have you shared that with? What is the hidden story of those on your team? And are they comfortable sharing that with you and other members of the team? Because I'm here to tell you, as you think about that inclusion continuum, you will never get to that ultimate goal of feeling valued and ensuring that your team feels valued unless you've shared your hidden story. Now, there are different perspectives around whether or not we bring our whole selves to work. But there is a hidden story that drives who you are and who they are that is still appropriate to share in the work environment because it allows you to cultivate a connection that just didn't exist. It allows you to cultivate a connection so the next time that person is offered $5,000 to leave the organization or $5 more an hour, I'm in healthcare, I know about the battle for caregivers. They feel connected, not just to you as a leader, but to the team. And I'll share with you something about my hidden story. And this just happened. If you asked me this question 3 days ago, it wouldn't have been my hidden story. But I'm doing my master's in psychology because I really believe in tying together the science behind how we think and the decisions that we make so that people don't feel blamed for the things that we do and how we think. And there was a young girl who was only 25 years old in my psychology program. We go at night and it was virtual. And the last time I saw her was a week ago Wednesday. And the school sent us an email on Monday saying that her remains had been found. And I want to tell you that it just completely crushed me. She was 25 and she had a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I just kept seeing her in the little square in our Zoom room, and our class is only 9 people. So you get to know everybody. And she was my project and my project partner. And it will have an indelible stamp on me as I do my work going forward. But it was important for me to share that with you because it's a part of my hidden story today and probably days from now. But it helps you to understand if for some reason my patterns of behavior are different than what you're accustomed to seeing. So it's so important that you continue to cultivate those connections and stay plugged in to the hidden story of not only yourself, but of your team, and understand how that impacts where they fall. So let's talk about the activators. First, let's set the stage, right? If you have teenagers, you have rules. You have rules that say you need to turn off your cell phone at 9 o'clock at night. You need to plug your laptop up in the kitchen. You have rules. And so the work environment is about setting the stage, setting the parameters around acceptable behavior. We presume good intentions in this work environment. We participate in earnest inquiry because we have curious minds. We welcome thoughtful feedback, and we understand that this is a journey, not a destination. So important for us to establish the parameters around how we work together in building teams that allow people to what? Feel valued so they add value. What else do? We talk straight. We are honest. We tell the truth. We let people know where they stand. We demonstrate respect. We genuinely care for others. We show that we care. We respect the dignity of every person and role. We had a leader who had a teammate who left our organization about 6 months ago. And 3 months after she left, she found out that she was terminally ill. And do you know that that leader came to us as a group and said, I would like volunteers for us to provide dinner for that ex-employee's family for as long as we can do it. That person can't do anything for us as an organization anymore. But that didn't matter because that spoke loud and clear about who we were as a team and how we would take care of you, even if you were no longer a part of the organization. Create transparency, tell the truth in a way that people can verify. Get real and genuine, be open and authentic. Share your hidden stories. Right wrongs quickly. Make things right when you are wrong. Apologize quickly. Make restitution where possible. Demonstrate personal humility. And finally, show loyalty. Speak about people as though they were present. Represent others who are not there to speak for themselves. Don't disclose others' private information. There is a proverb that I love, and it says, the way you speak about somebody else tells us more about you than the person you are describing. Remember that. So let's move to the next acronym, the next letter in our acronym BEAT. What are your thoughts and how does that impact where you fall? We're going to explore the concept of linear and dichotomous thinking. Let's begin. We need to be intentional because our muscle memory leads us, no, drives us to linear thinking. Linear thinking, the concept that our past experiences and exposure predict our future experiences and therefore drives our decision making. Why is this dangerous? Because the offshoot of linear thinking is dichotomous thinking. Thinking in two dimensions with little depth or nuance. All or nothing, always or never. Does that sound familiar? My partner always does this. My children never do that. Intentional inclusion is about uncovering the nuances, resulting in our ability as leaders to unlock the promise of those in the margin. Let's move our thoughts from this binary and therefore limiting worldview to opening up the possibilities. Linear thinking often results in generalization based on a particular situation or event. The individual on the team worked on one project and missed a milestone due to an unforeseen event. Therefore, they are never going to deliver on time. And by extension, they can't possibly be a trusted member of the team. Ask yourself as leaders, are you generalizing based on one scenario? Challenge yourself relentlessly on this thought process in order to be an intentionally inclusive leader. When practicing dichotomous thinking, thinking in extremes, we solve to there being a right and a wrong way, and this results in natural winners and losers. Learning to deconstruct linear and dichotomous thinking, and therefore leveraging the nuances, begins with us understanding what it takes to be holistic rather than binary thinkers. And we explore how committed we are to dichotomous and linear thinking. So it's critical to recognize that children develop strong attachment to their worldviews at an early age through socialization and ongoing reinforcement by merely being surrounded with sameness. People who look the same and have similar worldviews. So I want you to ask yourself again, What are your thoughts? And how do they impact where you fall on the continuum? Be sure that you are recognizing linear and dichotomous thinking. As we wrap up the presentation today, I want to give you some feedback around comments, things people have said that I've experienced that make them feel like they're on the outside looking in. My boss kept saying, how was your weekend with your husband? And I'm married to a woman. I've said that repeatedly. I struggled my first year on how to connect with people because it was a bar culture. And I kept being invited out with the team to drink. People jumped to the conclusion that because I was Black, I was from the inner city, and I became the person to represent the Black perspective in every room. People assumed that because I was Hispanic, I spoke Spanish. My boss ignored my pronouns, even though they were on my email signature, and how I consistently introduced myself. And I knew I belonged when people here owned up to their mistakes and allowed you to honestly share your concerns. My boss's boss remembered my dog's name and often asked about him. I can ask to have my camera off during virtual meetings when I'm having a tough day and it's supported. My boss practices silence as a skill to give others a chance to share, who may be less talkative on calls. We created an inclusion day at our organization. So some real tactical feedback and ideas. And we have a number of other ones that we are going to share with you as a part of this presentation. So as we wrap up today, I want you to think about the call to action, which is, what are 3 actions or behaviors I can leave this discussion with that I can put into motion when I go back into my organization? Thank you so much for your time today, and I'm going to turn it back over to Eric so you can have an opportunity to ask questions.
Thank you, Ingrid, for your insightful presentation. Just as a reminder, you can still enter your questions, and we're going to review some of the questions that came through. First question is, we are struggling to get employee buy-in for some of the cultural changes that we are trying to make. Do you have any advice for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, of course, it's going to depend on the nature of the cultural changes that you're trying to introduce. What's really important is for people to feel like they can participate if they want to and not if they don't, right? So it should always feel voluntary. And one of the examples I'm going to give you, which is something a lot of organizations struggle with, is unconscious bias training. We roll it out. Typically, and some organizations say this is mandatory. Well, our employees opt into that training, and I found that we have a 70% opt-in rate, because to be inclusive means that you have choice.
Thank you. The next question is, how do you make the culture more comfortable for people to share, instead of employees always feeling fear from the HR department?
Yeah, absolutely. So knowledge is what really helps in terms of people getting exposure to those who are unlike them. And one of the things that I like to talk about are our dimensions of diversity, because there are no 2 people on this call today who are exactly alike, despite how we look, despite our gender or race or ethnicity, because we are layered, complex beings. But the more I spend time with you is the more that I understand our similarities and differences. So creating opportunities for people to get to know people who are not like them really helps to bridge that gap. Think about a best friend at work program, for example, for new hires.
Great. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for this afternoon. Thank you, Ingrid, for this insightful presentation. And I want to thank everyone in the audience for joining us today for this excellent keynote. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Thank you.
Thank you.